Yeah, we go to Canberra after this, and then Sydney, and then Wellington, New Zealand, and then Auckland, New Zealand, and then back home to San Francisco. Yeah, so this is a crazy trip.
It is a crazy trip. So here you're going all around the world, and it's mostly about skepticism, the things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So my first question is, why? What is this skepticism thing that you are out there doing, and why do you keep doing it? What is it that you're hoping to achieve?
Well, obviously I'm in it for all of the money and the fame. So, well, no, that's a joke, but it's only kind of a joke. One of the best parts about my job is getting to do this, coming to an amazing place that I would otherwise never have the ability to come to, and meeting really wonderful, awesome people. But why skepticism in particular? You know, it's been a passion of mine since I was a little baby magician, and I spoke of this a bit yesterday. I spoke to some really amazing students here in Hong Kong who came to an event that was after school but voluntary. They didn't need to be there, and 150 kids showed up. It would, like, that would never happen in the U.S., you know, unless I was like Miley Cyrus.
It was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So you say skeptical. Now, the thing about this audience tonight, there's probably people in the audience here tonight who have been listening to you for many years on the SGU, but there's also people here in the audience tonight who maybe have never heard a single episode, who've never read your blog, don't really know what you do, and maybe even...
Get out!
And maybe even aren't really...
Oh, no, you can stay. You can stay.
No, she meant get out like she's astonished, not like get out like...
Sure.
Yeah, I translate. So, here's the thing. What is the skeptical movement? What is the purpose of it? What are your goals? What are the goals of the SGU? What are the goals of, let's say, Richard Saunders? You know, the guy who's hosting a conference in the U.S. or in Australia. What are you trying to do?
What is the SGU?
Very good question. What is the SGU? So SGU is my podcast, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Yeah. Do you want to switch, maybe? Maybe that one's better. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Yeah, that's better. You get the crappy. Well, nope.
I think it's the way you're using it.
The way I'm using it? No.
Yeah, just hold it back a little bit.
Touching it. Okay.
Put it on your chin like this.
On my chin?
Yeah.
Like this.
Or like that. That's the equal distance.
That's not how microphones work.
So just for those of you who are regular members of the SGU, regular members of Skeptics in the Pub, shut up. And those of you who are on a regular, or just here for the first time tonight, audience participation is often a regular part, but we're going to keep it to just you and I until the end, and then you can scream out your obscenities.
No, but it was a good question, because we do want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So yeah, SGU is a podcast I do called The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. We're one of the top podcasts on iTunes, one of the top science podcasts with about 180,000 listeners per week. And I also run a website called Skepchick at skepchick.org. It's actually a network of sites now covering the topics of science and critical thinking, and also things like secularism and feminism, and sometimes how those things interact with things like art and or LGBT issues. We also have websites in Swedish and Norwegian and Spanish. So those are the things I do. As for what skepticism is, the idea is that I feel like skepticism is the scientific method applied to everyday life. So we don't accept what people tell us just because it's coming from, say, an authority we trust. We question the world around us. We investigate the world around us. And skepticism as a movement, I see as something that is ultimately a compassionate idea. It's the idea that we want to prevent people from being taken advantage of, teaching people how easy it is to fool yourself, and thereby how easy it is for other people to fool you. One of the ways that I got interested in skepticism was, as a magician, I noticed psychics using the same sort of tricks that magicians use, but lying about it. So while magicians are quote-unquote honest liars, as we like to say, we tell you we're going to lie to you, and then we lie to you, and it's still amazing. Psychics lie to you, but they pretend that they're telling the truth, and they play upon your emotions. They distort your memories of your loved ones. They can take a vast amount of money from people using those techniques. So that's how I got involved, which was basically, skepticism as a compassionate exercise, as a way to help people develop a toolkit, a mental toolkit to separate fact from fiction.
So one of the things that I find hardest in getting skepticism going here in Hong Kong is motivation. Because there are so many scandalous things going on here with acupuncture and homeopathy and traditional Chinese medicine, reflexology. I could go on and on and on, cupping, go on and on and on and on. So what would you advise us as a skeptical group, and maybe compare them to your own? What are good goals for a skeptical group? What are your goals?
Oh man, my goals are mostly to have fun and learn more every day, but those are personal goals. When it comes to, a few years ago on Skeptic, we were dealing with, we get a good deal of negativity, and it, originally was from outside of skepticism, people who are chiropractors angry that we were criticizing their practices, or, acupuncturists and things like that. These days, we get a lot of hatred from people who are angry about us speaking up for women's rights from a skeptical perspective. And it gets tough when you're dealing with things like, rape and death threats on the regular. And so as a group, we decided that we needed to refocus and, in a way, focus on positive action. And as a group, we had a discussion, and the discussion was, what thing can we do that will have the most positive impact using the tools that we have available? And so within our skeptical purview, one of the things we identified as being a serious up-and-coming issue was the anti-vaccine movement. We had a number of mothers blogging for us who were staunch supporters of vaccines. If you're not familiar, vaccines are, for the most part, across the board, the vaccines that we give to children today in the developed world are safe and effective and necessary for preventing diseases like measles, mumps, rubella, stopping the spread of influenza. And there are a number of people who are spreading misinformation about this, telling vulnerable parents that vaccines might cause autism or other serious issues. These are lies at this point. I think we can safely call them lies. There's a huge amount of scientific evidence that shows that it's just not true. Vaccines are, in fact, safe and effective. And so we realized this is an area where we can make a difference. We can do vaccine clinics, for instance. So that's one of the things we started doing. We worked with the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. Is that right? Yeah. Sure. I'm sorry, I've had like 3 hours of sleep, you guys. We worked with them, and
but that was 3 hours this afternoon.
It was this afternoon.
So really,
12 to 3 p.m. The best time. We worked with a guy at the CDC that we met, and he was able to get us a batch of free pertussis vaccines. If you're not familiar, pertussis is, to simplify things, pertussis is whooping cough, which is a disease that can kill babies quite easily. In adults, it can manifest as maybe just a really bad cough that eventually goes away. But if you have it, you can very easily spread it to babies and immunocompromised people who can't have vaccines. The pertussis vaccine is very effective, but it wears off. And a lot of people don't realize that they need pertussis booster shots. So we set up shop at large conferences. Particularly, I think the first one we did was Dragon Con, which is a giant nerd conference in Atlanta for comic books and things like that. 60,000 people show up there, and we gave away free pertussis shots, and it was outrageously successful. The nurses who were doing it told us that normally they do these sort of clinics on weekends at malls, and they can go an entire day without vaccinating anybody. But we had a line going out the door and wrapping around a food court. And the best part was, because it was a nerd conference, they were all dressed up like Predator and stuff. So yeah, that was one way we could do that, and that actually also spawned a nonprofit organization called Women Thinking, which is focused on educating parents on the facts about vaccines, and also doing studies to determine the best ways to reach out to parents and educate them about those things.
So would you say that's some of the proudest work that you've done as a skeptic, or do you have a real special thing that you've done as a skeptic that you're really super proud of, either on the SGU or as part of your blog, or even independent of that?
I think in general, when it comes to skepticism, yes, that is something I'm extremely proud of, and it's part of like the larger thing that I'm proud of that is related to is, you know, I see Skeptic as a really easy way to provide a voice to people who otherwise would not have a voice. So it can be really difficult to start up your own blog and generate a large audience and get people to listen to you, even if you are entertaining and smart and you have the expertise. But Skeptic allows us to identify people we see as talented individuals who are usually from marginalized groups that we don't hear from very often within the skeptic community. So women, people of color, people with disabilities, people who are coming from different backgrounds that have different things to add to our movement. And we give them that voice. And there are some people who take that opportunity and they just blog every now and again, and that's all they want to do, and that's fine. But I'm really, really proud of the fact that through Skeptic we have spawned a number of really amazing people, mostly women, who have gone on to start giving talks at larger conferences. They start out blogging, they develop their voice, they develop an audience, they go to their local skeptics in the pub, or they start a local skeptics in the pub, they give a talk there, then they go to a national conference and start giving talks there. I'm really proud, I don't have children, and this is as close as I can get to that feeling of seeing, somebody up on stage that started out on Skeptic, and I just feel like an overwhelming sense of pride that we were their gateway drug.
That's awesome. On Skeptic, of course, there's more than just science and skepticism. There's a lot of God talk on Skeptic. So how do you keep these two areas separate? I don't know if you know, but Skeptics in the Pub here was actually started by the Hong Kong Atheist Society, and then we went on to form the Skeptical Society. It was a secular group before it was a science skepticism group. So how do you keep these two issues separate? Do you think they should be separate? And which one do you prefer to? Which area do you prefer to work in?
Oh wow. Skepticism. I was about to pretend as though, I can't pick, I love everybody. No, skeptics are better. I am an atheist, and I started Boston Skeptics with Boston Skeptics in the Pub, and there was a Boston Atheist group already in existence. And it was great, they do what they do, and they have fun doing it. It just wasn't for me. And it occurred to me what the difference was once. There's a man in Boston who, I think he worked at Harvard, probably still does, Andreas Mershon, a really brilliant man, and I saw him give a talk at a science, basically a science thing hosted by Nature that was in a pub, and I was the only non-scientist there, and I know that because in his talk he was like, everybody here's a scientist, right? Anybody here not a scientist? And I was just like, oh. Okay. And then, after his talk, we talked a bit, and we really hit it off. And I left there, and then the next week I had Boston Skeptics in the Pub, and it was a packed crowd. It was a space sort of like this, and that month, it varied how many people we got. That month we had 200 people packed in. And I remember working my way through the audience, trying to get to the stage. and I run smack dab into Andreas Mershon, and he says, "You're the non-scientist." And I was like, "That is correct." And he said, "Do you run this?" And I said, "Yeah, we just started it, Skeptics in the Pub." And he said, "This is amazing." He said, "I've been to the Boston Atheists. They're really nice people, but I like this better because they are all about talking about the answer, and you're talking about the question." And that's why I prefer skepticism when it comes to conferences and things, because sometimes, I go to a lot of conferences, and the atheist conferences tend to be about how there is no God. That's great. What else?
Let's go for lunch.
Right, yeah. And
Get a
scene. And that's it. So I personally feel that atheism is the natural result of skepticism. For me, it was my natural result of questioning everything, and everything included my religious upbringing. Obviously, that's not true for everybody. So I often get the question of, well, do you think that someone can be a skeptic but not an atheist? And my answer is always, yeah, of course they can, because there's no such thing as a skeptic. There's no such thing as a perfect person who has 100% logically evaluated every single thing they believe in. Like, everybody believes in something stupid. And personally, I think that believing in a supernatural deity is illogical. If you don't, that's fine. You could still have that skeptical toolkit. You could still be applying it to many areas of your life. Maybe you're applying it to that area and you've just found the evidence to be worth it. So yeah, I think that the two things are definitely related. But yeah, to me it's like saying what's the difference between a skeptic conference and a conference about not believing in Bigfoot. It's just one is one very particular answer to one question, and the other is just a ton of different questions.
You mentioned a couple times that you go to a lot of conferences. These conferences are always sponsored by these big, giant skeptical organizations in the U.S. I'll throw out some letters, but I'll give you the names afterwards. The CFI, Center for Inquiry, has an event. The Skepticon is actually this weekend. I think that's Free Thought guys who do Skepticon, right? And then there is TAM, the Amazing Meeting, which is run by JREF, the James Randi Educational Foundation. There is a lot of conferences. And then there's one conference, which is my favorite conference. I am not biased at all, and that is Nexus, the Northeast Conference on Science and Skepticism. So there's and there's actually the Northern California, they have conferences there as well. So what of all of these groups, which ones, of all of these groups and of all of these conferences, which ones would you recommend that we go to? And the reason I ask this question is because I was motivated to stay in skepticism by going to Nexus. And I know that there are people in this room who have been motivated to stay in skepticism because they went to TAM and they had an extraordinary experience. So tell us about the conferences, what you like about them, what happens there, and which one's your favorite.
Yeah, I agree. TAM was my first conference in Vegas years and years ago, and it's great to be in a place like that. It's very similar to this, coming out to an event and just being there in person, seeing all these other people who have similar ways of thinking. It is really motivating. I always go away from conferences feeling excited to go do more. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. They can be very good for that. Which ones are my favorites? It gets difficult because, skepticism is often compared to herding cats. It's difficult to organize a movement around a bunch of people who are skeptical of movements. And I'm like that. I'm very skeptical of large organizations. I'm very much in favor of examining the things I love. Examining, for instance, problematic media. Like I love Game of Thrones. Let's talk about race issues in Game of Thrones.
Do you have any more spoilers?
Oh yeah, I have a few spoilers. So it's the same thing happens with the skeptic movement. I feel that we need to really be on top of things. We often criticize our quote unquote enemies, like Sylvia Brown, the psychic, once was arrested for fraud, and we bring that up, and I think it's appropriate. So when one of our own is, arrested for fraud, like Brian Dunning, who runs the Skeptoid podcast. We should be open about the fact that that is messed up, and that it's